One of your biggest regrets was not squashing out things with Pop.
Yeah.
That still sits with you to this day?
It do.
Snoop Dogg wasn't on speaking terms with Tupac when he was killed, and that guilt has haunted him ever since. Now, after years of silence, he's in court, finally speaking out and revealing shocking new details. Turns out, he may have been more involved in Tupac's death than anyone realized. Let's break it down. The real talk. Snoop Dogg and Tupac had a powerful bond that went beyond music. They were like brothers, united by their street roots, lyrical talent, and drive to rep the West Coast with raw authenticity. Their chemistry lit up tracks like Two of America's Most Wanted, and their connection extended into real life, with Tupac mentoring Snoop and even pushing him to marry his longtime love, Shantae. They even planned to open a restaurant together, showing just how deep their friendship ran. But as close as they were, tensions eventually crept in. The East Coast-West Coast beef wasn't just rap drama, it was deadly serious. Tupac, still angry and suspicious after his 1994 shooting, began demanding absolute loyalty. Meanwhile, Snoop tried to stay neutral, publicly showing respect for East Coast artists like Biggie and Puff Daddy. Tupac saw this as a betrayal, and that crack in their brotherhood marked the beginning of a painful fallout. The tension reached its boiling point in the days before Tupac got murked. According to Suge Knight's recent statements from the pen, Tupac went off on Snoop after hearing him on the radio showing love to Biggie and Diddy. Knight broke down the whole scene, painting a picture of a friendship that had gone from day one homies to straight up enemies.
Pac just runs in my room. I'm like, man, what's up? He like, you got a radio? And, he all pumped up. He cut the radio on, and we listened to Snoop on the radio.
The betrayal Tupac felt was real deep and personal, man. This wasn't just about business or artistic differences. This was about loyalty, about family, about them unwritten street codes that governed their whole world. Knight kept breaking it down, describing how Tupac felt that he had put everybody on death row and made sure they was on my album, only to have Snoop seemingly turn his back when things got real. But the most shocking part comes from what happened next. According to Knight's testimony, the confrontation between Tupac and Snoop got physical, with some serious consequences for their relationship, and some say for Tupac's ultimate fate.
So when we got, downstairs, Pac took off on Snoop. Pac ran up on him, did what he did. Snoop ran this way, Pac running behind him. I stopped it. We ain't finna be doing all this in New York, making us all look like we some idiots. I said,
The picture Knight paints is straight devastating. Two homies, two brothers, reduced to throwing hands over questions of loyalty and betrayal. But it gets worse, real talk. Knight reveals that Snoop refused to ride with Tupac on their flight back home, instead choosing to ride in the van with the luggage, which was straight disrespectful and showed how far their relationship had fallen. This is where the story takes its most tragic turn, because just days after this whole situation, Tupac would get gunned down in Vegas, and Snoop's absence from that fateful night would become one of the most talked about details in hip-hop history. Warren G. Dunn said that Snoop's last-minute visit to his crib prevented Snoop from being in the whip during Tupac's fatal drive-by, a twist of fate that some see as just coincidence and others view with mad suspicion. Now, let's fast forward to that hospital room where the dying Tupac was hooked up to machines fighting for his life. This is where Snoop's story becomes not just complicated, but potentially explosive in its implications for everything we thought we knew about Tupac's final days. Snoop has repeatedly claimed in interviews, including a detailed 2022 appearance on Logan Paul's Impulsive podcast, that he visited Tupac in the hospital. According to Snoop's version of events, it was a heart-wrenching scene of reconciliation and brotherly love, with Tupac's mom's Afeni playing peacemaker.
Right after I heard Tupac got shot, and I was so weak I damn near fell over. I immediately flew to Vegas, and I walked in the room and I seen him laid out on the bed with all kind of tubes in it.
It's a beautiful story, one that speaks to the power of forgiveness and the strength of brotherhood even when death is knocking at the door. Snoop has described passing out upon seeing Tupac on life support and the emotional impact of their final moments together. But here's where things get real problematic. Suge Knight is calling this whole narrative straight cap. In recent prison interviews, Knight has flatly denied that Snoop ever stepped foot in that hospital, painting a completely different picture of Snoop's reaction to Tupac's shooting. According to Knight, Snoop was nowhere near that hospital, and the emotional reconciliation story is nothing but a carefully constructed lie designed to clean up Snoop's image after their very public falling out.
So Snoop didn't go nowhere near the hospital. So when it happened, as you know, for some strange reason, but now we know the real reason, Snoop did not attend the fight with us or the club, the after party at Club 662. And what's so crazy about that, we thought it was strange that he wasn't there. This is the first one he didn't attend.
Suge Knight's claims go beyond just questioning Snoop Dogg's absence during Tupac's final days. He suggests Snoop may have had advanced knowledge of the shooting that ultimately killed Tupac. Knight says he tried calling Snoop multiple times after the shooting, urging him to come to Vegas, but Snoop gave evasive responses. The most explosive part of Knight's story is what happened when Snoop finally did show up, not at the hospital, but at Knight's place. There, he reportedly spoke with Tupac's mother in a way that hinted he knew more than he let on, raising serious suspicions about what Snoop really knew and when.
And then Tupac's mother was there, and Fanny, she was like, yeah, I know you should want to see him. He told her, he was like, well, look, Tupac hating me right now. He mad at me.
The conversation Knight describes paints Snoop as a man consumed by guilt and fear, someone who knew that his relationship with Tupac had gotten so bad that even a deathbed visit might not be welcome. But the most disturbing part of Knight's account is what happened next.
But we all do that with our mothers. So she said, well, he was mad at me too, but that's my son, I'm there. And if he hates you, you still supposed to go do the right thing and go visit him, right? So as we start talking, Snoop did start crying and fell down and start throwing up, like literally throwing up, right? So we looking at him like, damn, what happened to this dude?
Knight's description of Snoop's physical reaction, crying and throwing up, suggests a level of emotional distress that goes way beyond normal grief. It's the reaction of someone who might be carrying a terrible burden of guilt or knowledge about what had happened to his former homie. The implications are crazy. Real talk. If Knight's account is accurate, then Snoop never actually visited Tupac in the hospital, despite his repeated claims to the contrary. The emotional story of reconciliation, the touching moment with Afeni Shakur, the whispered words of love and encouragement, all of it would be complete fiction, a carefully constructed narrative designed to mask whatever really happened during those crucial final days. But Knight's revelations don't stop there. In recent interviews, he's made even more explosive claims about Snoop's behavior after Tupac's death, allegations that suggest a pattern of deception and possibly even complicity that extends way beyond a simple hospital visit. Knight has accused Snoop of being involved in efforts to silence key witnesses in Tupac's murder case, specifically claiming that Snoop has been secretly trying to bail out Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, the cat who was finally arrested in 2023 for orchestrating Tupac's killing.
But instead of just saying less, since I've been in here, Snoop and other people been having people trying to bail the guy out, Keefe D, because he talking too much. Raging them trying to do stuff for Puffy because they say he talking too much.
Suge Knight portrays Tupac's murder as part of a larger conspiracy involving major figures in hip-hop, with Snoop Dogg allegedly at the center. Despite presenting himself for years as Tupac's loyal friend, Knight claims Snoop was actually protecting himself and others by hiding key truths about the killing. Snoop has brushed off these accusations, blaming them on Knight's jealousy after he acquired Death Row Records in 2022. But the specificity and seriousness of Knight's claims have sparked renewed scrutiny, making it harder to dismiss them without a closer look. The whole conspiracy exposed. At the center of this explosive revelation is Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, a 60-year-old former shot caller whose arrest in September 2023 sent shockwaves through the hip-hop community and beyond. But it's not just what Keefe D. has revealed about the murder itself that's causing such upheaval. It's what his testimony suggests about the involvement of some of hip-hop's most iconic figures, including the man who has long portrayed himself as Tupac's grieving homie, Snoop Dogg. To understand the magnitude of what we're dealing with, we need to go back to that night in September 1996, when Tupac and Suge Knight attended the Mike Tyson versus Bruce Seldon boxing match at the MGM Grand. What happened in the hours that followed would not only claim the life of one of rap's greatest talents, but would also set in motion a cover-up that has persisted for nearly 3 decades. Real talk. The MGM Grand lobby assault on Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, caught on tape, was the trigger for Tupac's fatal shooting. But behind that moment was a web of gang rivalries and tensions that had been brewing for months, setting the stage for deadly retaliation. Orlando Anderson, only 23, was more than a gang member. He was the nephew of Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, a powerful Crips leader with deep ties to both gang life and the rap industry. Davis's long-standing tensions with Death Row Records and its blood affiliates made him a key player in the violent crossroads of gang rivalries and hip-hop's East Coast-West Coast war. The night of the shooting, according to Davis's own admissions in police interviews and his memoir, events unfolded with deadly precision. Davis has repeatedly stated that he was in the front passenger seat of a white Cadillac that pulled alongside Tupac and Suge's BMW at a red light, with his nephew Orlando Anderson and associates Terrence Bubble Up Brown and DeAndre Dre Smith also in the whip.
This was the white Cadillac?
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys are driving around, and then you hear these girls say, Tupac, Tupac.
The casual way Davis describes spotting Tupac reveals the opportunistic nature of what was about to unfold. This wasn't some carefully planned assassination. It was a moment of violent revenge that escalated rapidly from recognition to execution.
And we just came and shit. I ain't gonna go into the details like that, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, you got it in the book. You done played it, everything else, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Well, in the book, you said that as you're driving up towards the BMW, with Suge driving and Tupac in the passenger seat, and you said that Tupac pulled out a gun.
It looked like he was reaching, yeah. Yeah, it did.
Okay.
The revelation that Tupac may have been reaching for his strap adds another layer of complexity to the narrative. It suggests that Tupac, perhaps sensing the danger, was prepared to defend himself, but it was too late for real.
Did you actually see a gun?
No, once he got the reaching, I got the ducking.
So someone from your car
That's what happened.
started shooting at Tupac and Suge.
Lane starts blasting. You say Suge looks over, he sees you.
The chaos that followed would claim Tupac's life and forever change the trajectory of hip-hop culture. But according to Davis's account, the violence didn't end with the initial shooting.
I seen a bullet going Suge's head. I thought he was dead.
So Orlando shot across Dre?
The picture Davis paints is one of calculated violence, with multiple shooters and a level of coordination that suggests this wasn't just a spontaneous act of revenge. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of his testimony is what it reveals about the broader conspiracy that may have been at work that night. Dwayne Keefe D. Davis has claimed that Sean Diddy Combs offered $1 million for Tupac's murder during the East Coast-West Coast feud, allegations Diddy denies. But Suge Knight takes it further, accusing Snoop Dogg of secretly trying to bail out Keefe D to keep damaging truths hidden. If true, it suggests Snoop's role in Tupac's death may go beyond grief and into cover-up territory. Knight also alleges a broader conspiracy involving Snoop, Diddy, and Ray J, linked by puffy ties, all working to suppress the truth about what really happened to Tupac. If these claims are accurate, the murder wasn't just gang retaliation. It was part of a coordinated industry cover-up. The timeline of events becomes even more suspicious when we examine Snoop's whereabouts on the night of the shooting. Warren G has stated that Snoop's last-minute visit to his house prevented Snoop from being in the car during Tupac's fatal drive-by, a coincidence that some find difficult to believe.
Your security. They can't go. Security like, all right, well, come on with us, dog. I'm like, nah. I'm gonna stay down. I'm riding with them. Like, this either the moment you gonna kill me, and we're gonna get some clarity in this air. We got a 5.5-hour flight.
The tension Snoop describes on this flight just days before Tupac's death reveals the depth of the beef that had developed between them. Snoop has described feeling threatened during this flight, to the point where he armed himself with a knife and fork, suggesting that he believed his life might be in danger from his own label mates.
So if somebody gonna get killed, if I'm gonna get killed, somebody dying with me.
This level of paranoia and fear provides crucial context for understanding Snoop's actions in the days that followed. If he genuinely believed that Tupac and Suge might harm him, it would explain both his absence from the fatal Vegas trip and his subsequent behavior. But the story becomes even more complex when we examine Keefe D's current legal situation. Davis was arrested in September 2023 and charged with first-degree murder for his alleged role in orchestrating Tupac's killing. His trial, originally scheduled for March 2025, has been delayed multiple times, with his legal team arguing that they need more time to review evidence and interview witnesses. Davis has pleaded not guilty and maintains his innocence, despite his previous admissions in police interviews and his memoir. In a March 2025 jailhouse interview, he claimed that his prior statements were made under duress and that there's no physical evidence linking him to the crime. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the current legal proceedings is what Davis might reveal if he decides to cooperate fully with authorities. His previous statements have implicated not just Orlando Anderson as the shooter, but have also suggested broader industry involvement in the conspiracy.
So, arresting Keefe D after all this time for his role or his not role in, the death of Tupac, pointless to me, because the person that killed Tupac got murdered.
Yeah,
and if you're from Compton or you're from LA and you're as deep in the streets as I am, then you know what's up.
The casual way figures like The Game discuss the Orlando story reveals how well-known certain details of the murder have been within hip-hop circles for decades. This raises uncomfortable questions about who knew what and when, and why it has taken nearly 30 years for any arrest to be made.
Who killed Tupac, who killed Biggie is no mystery to live in LA, man.
Biggie, I don't know. I'll be honest.
We gonna keep you in the not know, and
You can keep me the not know. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But the Tupac story I've known for a good 15 years.
yeah.
And listen, I did the interview with Keefe that basically laid out the whole story.
The suggestion that the truth about Tupac's murder has been an open secret within certain circles for years raises disturbing questions about why justice has been so long delayed. It also suggests that there may be powerful forces at work to keep certain information from becoming public. Adding fuel to the fire, Snoop's 1993 murder arrest record was sealed in early 2024, just months after Keefe D's arrest, raising serious suspicions. When seen together, these pieces point to a long-running cover-up. If Suge Knight's claims hold weight, Snoop may not just be hiding the truth, he may have played a role in keeping it buried. And while the public is just catching on, the streets have whispered these suspicions for years, silenced only by fear and loyalty. Now, with Keefe D facing life in prison and Suge Knight spilling all the tea from behind bars, that carefully constructed wall of silence is starting to crumble. The question ain't whether the truth will come out anymore. It's whether those responsible will finally be held accountable for their actions, and whether the hip-hop community will be able to deal with the reality that some of its most beloved figures may have been complicit in one of its greatest tragedies. The Courtroom Confessions. The final chapter of Tupac's murder saga is unfolding not on stage, but in courtrooms and prison interviews where long-buried truths are finally surfacing. Dwayne Keefe D. Davis's upcoming 2026 trial marks a critical turning point, offering the first real chance for the events of September 7th, 1996 to be examined under oath. As revelations threaten to shatter decades-old reputations, the real drama lies not just in court, but in prison calls, interviews, and behind-the-scenes efforts to contain a truth that's rapidly slipping out of control. Keefe D's own statements from custody revealed the extent to which powerful figures may have been working behind the scenes to influence his case. His complaints about his health deteriorating due to prison conditions, his claims that his previous confessions were made under duress, and his allegations about industry figures trying to bail him out all point to a case that extends way beyond simple gang retaliation. The psychological profile that emerges from Knight's descriptions of Snoop's behavior, the crying, the throwing up, the false promises about naming a child after Tupac, paints a picture of a man consumed by guilt over his actions. This isn't the behavior of someone who simply failed to prevent a tragedy. It's the behavior of someone who knows they bear responsibility for causing it. Snoop's response to these allegations has been characteristically dismissive, attributing Knight's claims to jealousy over Snoop's 2022 acquisition of Death Row Records. But the specificity and consistency of Knight's accusations make them difficult to dismiss as simply the rantings of a bitter rival. The pattern of Snoop's public statements over the years also takes on new significance when viewed through the lens of potential guilt rather than grief. His repeated emphasis on his regret about not reconciling with Tupac before his death could be interpreted not as the normal remorse of a homie who lost touch, but as the specific guilt of someone who knows they played a role in that death.
Yeah,
That still sits with you to this day?
it do. It do, because he was really my friend. And, you guys, sometimes motherfuckers be talking like they don't really know, but that was my friend and he was like dear to me. And anytime you got a relationship with somebody and it's like, it's working, it's going good, and then y'all get an argument, then the nigga die. Like, come on, man. I didn't even get a chance, whether I was wrong or right, just to be able to get that follow-up, because that's how we was.
The way Snoop frames this regret, focusing on the argument and his inability to get that follow-up, could be read as the words of someone who knows that their falling out with Tupac had consequences way beyond just damaged friendship. The broader implications of these revelations extend way beyond the individuals directly involved. If the allegations about industry-wide conspiracy and cover-up are accurate, they would represent one of the most significant scandals in entertainment history. The idea that some of hip-hop's most beloved figures may have been involved in murdering one of the genre's greatest talents would fundamentally alter how we understand the culture and its history. The fact that these allegations are emerging now, nearly 30 years after Tupac's death, speaks to the power of the forces that have kept them suppressed for so long. But it also suggests that the truth has a way of eventually surfacing, regardless of how much money and influence is brought to bear in trying to suppress it. Suge Knight's decision to go public with these allegations from prison represents a calculated risk that could have enormous consequences for everyone involved. Knight himself acknowledges the potential dangers of speaking out, noting that he could face retaliation for breaking what he calls street code.
It takes me right back in that car where I knew who was shooting. I knew how many people were shooting, who participated in doing what, who was being Judas.
The biblical reference to Judas is particularly significant, as it positions the Tupac murder not just as a gang retaliation or industry rivalry, but as an act of betrayal by those closest to him. This framing transforms the story from a tragic consequence of the East Coast-West Coast rivalry.
The shooter, the person who shot Tupac, did you get to see their face, and was this a person that worked for Death Row?
You there? What I would say is this.
Into something much more personal and devastating. Knight's confirmation that the shooter was someone who worked for Death Row represents perhaps the most significant revelation in the entire case. If accurate, it means that Tupac was killed not by external enemies, but by someone within his own organization, someone he trusted and worked with daily.
I know it was more than one person involved in the assassination.
The use of the word assassination rather than murder is also significant, as it implies a level of planning and coordination that goes beyond the spontaneous gang retaliation narrative that has dominated public understanding of the case. This sense of obligation to Tupac's memory, combined with Knight's apparent belief that he may not have much time left to tell his story, has created a unique moment where long-suppressed information is finally beginning to surface. The legal implications of these revelations could be enormous. If Knight's allegations about Snoop's involvement can be substantiated, it could lead to new charges being filed nearly 3 decades after the original crime. The statute of limitations doesn't apply to murder, and conspiracy charges could potentially be brought against anyone who was involved in planning the crime or covering it up afterward. But perhaps more significantly, these revelations could finally provide closure for Tupac's family and fans, who have waited nearly 30 years for answers about what really happened that night in Vegas. The fact that Tupac's family hired investigators in 2024 to probe potential connections to Sean Diddy Combs suggests that they too are not satisfied with the official narrative and are seeking the truth, regardless of where it might lead. The broader cultural implications of these revelations cannot be overstated. Hip-hop has always been a genre that prided itself on authenticity and keeping it real, but the emergence of this conspiracy suggests that some of its biggest stars may have been living lies for decades. The idea that Snoop Dogg, who has built a career partly on his association with Tupac and his portrayal of himself as a loyal homie, may have actually been involved in Tupac's death would represent one of the most shocking betrayals in entertainment history. The street's been talking for years, and now that talk is finally being backed up with receipts. Veterans of the death row era have long sensed something was off about Tupac's death, but fear, loyalty, and power kept the truth hidden. Now with Keef D facing life in prison and Suge Knight speaking out from behind bars, that silence is finally breaking. As Keef D's trial approaches, new evidence and allegations suggest Tupac's murder was far more than a random act of violence. It was a calculated betrayal involving some of hip-hop's most iconic figures. Suge Knight describes it as an assassination, involving a network of individuals, not just a lone shooter. At the heart of these revelations stands a shocking claim that Snoop Dogg, long seen as Tupac's brother in arms, may have played a hidden role in the tragedy. As decades-old narratives collapse, the hip-hop world faces a harsh truth. Loyalty was shattered, and the real story is far darker than anyone imagined. The truth, as they say, will set you free. But for those who have spent decades living with the consequences of their actions on that fateful night in 1996, the emergence of that truth may prove to be the most terrifying development of all. The streets don't forget, and now, finally, the world is about to remember what really went down that night in Vegas. Alright, thanks for rocking with me. If you thought this video was wild, make sure you peep those other bangers showing up on your screen right now. They're just as fire, no cap. I'll catch you in the next video. Stay woke.